Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shanae Show. A couple of little things before I get into this book tag. First off, apologies for any background noise. The gardeners for one of my neighbors are working, so it is what it is until they stop, if they stop during this video. Second off, a little announcement. This also applies to the monthly Thursdays series as well. I'll reiterate this again in Thursday's video, monthly Thursdays. But next month in July, there will be no book tag Tuesdays video, and there will be no monthly Thursdays video. And that is because I want the focus to be on Anime Expo. I have tried looking for a bookish tag that relates more to manga, and I have tried to think of ideas that I could do for the monthly Thursdays video for July, but as of right now there's not going to be any videos for either the Book Talk Tuesdays series nor the monthly Thursdays series, and that's just to make it as easy on myself as possible while my focus is on recording for the Anime Expo vlog itself and the Get Ready With Me chats video and the merchandise haul. Again, unless I can think of a manga specific tag that I can do for Book Tag Tuesdays or have a more anime centric, Anime Expo centric video for the monthly Thursdays series, there's not going to be a video for either series in July. It may change, but I highly doubt it. But with that out of the way, let's get into this month's episode of Book Tag Tuesdays, the TBR book tag. The first prompt is, how do you keep track of your TBR pile? I don't really have like a specific list. Like, I do keep track of books I would like to read in the story graph. I try to mark them as to read, but I don't really have anything specifically set. I don't really have like a specific list or compilement of all the books that I would want to read. I don't have a good reason as for why I don't do that, but at the same time, every time I've thought about like keeping like a TBR shelf or having a more definite TBR list, I personally feel like I don't have a good enough reason to do that kind of thing. The next prompt is your TBR mostly print or digital, audio or ebook? The original prompt that I found said ebook, but I decided to do digital because a lot of people include audiobooks in their TBRs as well. The thing is my TBR is eclectic in a way, kind of like what I was saying with the first prompt where it's like there isn't really anything specific. My TBR is mostly to keep track of books. Let me rephrase that. My TBR on my Storygraph app, mostly to keep track of books that I don't have access to either physically or in the Kindle app or through Kindle Unlimited, or I don't have a hold on, or I'm not borrowing it in the Hoopla or Libby apps at a specific moment. Like, that's what my TBR is for, to keep track of books that I maybe not borrowing right away or don't have on my bookshelf right away that I would maybe like to read because the cover was interesting or the premise was interesting. So in that way, I would say that there's no real specific format, because if I see a book that I've been interested in at a bookstore on Amazon, then I'm probably gonna pick it up if I feel like I have the funds to get it. But on the other hand, I probably would say it's more digital, my TBR, audiobook or ebook, because lately my first instinct has been to gravitate to borrowing from Libby and Hoopla. I would say a majority of the books that I want to read or want to read soon or have holds on through Libby and Hoopla are digital, audiobook, or ebook. Most of them have been audiobook. I do have some ebooks in Kindle Unlimited that I've been wanting to read. So I would say it's mostly digital. It's so hard to describe it, but I hope that made sense. The next prompt is, how do you determine which book from your TBR to read next? As I mentioned in last month's Book Tag Tuesdays video, I am very much a mood reader, so it's very much highly dependent on the fact of what am I in the mood to read? What do I have the mental capacity for? Because it's a combination of being in the mood for a specific book and having enough mental capacity, both like enough time to dedicate to that book mentally and also be in a mental and emotional space for it. Because there are books that I want to read, but I might not be emotionally ready to read them for whatever reasons. So it's a combination of mood reading and then what am I mentally and emotionally ready for. I know people have like TBR shelves or like those little TBR carts. I don't do that, and I don't think I could do that because I like my books on my bookshelf like where they're meant to be. I don't like the idea of having them on a separate TBR shelf, at least for my physical books. I don't like the idea of having them on a separate shelf only to try to figure out a space for them on my bookshelf once I read them. Like, I don't like the idea of that. I understand why people do like it, but I don't like it. The next prompt is a book that's been on your TBR the longest. The thing is I actually cleared up my TBR pile, at least in the story graph. I cleared it up pretty recently, within a couple of months of this video going up, mainly because I kind of don't like keeping books on my TBR pile that I know I'm not going to get to, or know I won't want to get to, which is literally the last prompt. I just read ahead a little bit. That's literally the last prompt, but I'll talk about that later. I kind of don't like keeping books on my TBR pile that I'm probably not going to get to, or I know I'm not going to get to, just because I want my focus to be the books I am interested in. I'm really trying to curate like my shelves, both my physical shelves, my Kindle shelves, any audiobook shelves that I have through Libby and Hoopla and Audible, even my TBR shelf through the story graph. Like, I really like keeping my shelves very specific to what I'm interested in at any given point of my life. And if there's a book on my TBR shelf that I'm not interested in anymore and I don't think I'm going to read, I don't want to keep it there just because, like, as I go down the line, like, I don't want to stumble upon it and be like, why was I interested in you, you know? That's just the way I view it. But on my physical shelf, I kind of don't feel like pulling either of these books out, but it's kind of a tie between The Princess Bride by William Goldman and The Adventures of Indiana Jones, both books I talked about in last month's book tag. I kind of don't feel like pulling them back off of my bookshelf for this tag. I think I've had The Princess Bride on my bookshelf longer than The Adventures of Indiana Jones. I think I got them around the same time, so it's kind of equal tie between those two. The next prompt is a book you recently added to your TBR. This is another book that I talked about in last month's book tag video, and I do remember thinking while I was recording last month's book tag Tuesdays video that there was going to be a lot of overlap between that and this. It is what it is. We're doing this tag now. A book that I recently added to my TBR. It's sort of been on like the TBR radar, as I call it, but that is Guild by Raven Kennedy. My like TBR radar are books that I see on social media like Bookstagram, Book Talk, here on BookTube. There are books that I see that people I follow or subscribe to are promoting, are really liking, that I'm like sort of interested in but haven't committed to or haven't quite added it to my TBR yet. So that's the TBR radar, and I recently added Guild to my TBR because I bought it. Now that it's on my physical bookshelf, it's on my TBR. The next prompt is a book that's on your TBR strictly because of its beautiful cover. On the one hand, I would repeat Guild by Raven Kennedy with this. There should be an image of the cover here. I don't feel like going to grab it, but I'm looking at it on my bookshelf. I would say that, but because this was kind of close, kind of handy, this is not on my TBR strictly because of its beautiful cover, but its beautiful cover definitely helps. And that is Heaven Official's Blessing, Volume 1 by Mo Jiantongju. Please let me know if I'm saying that wrong and how to say it properly. A large part of it is like, I love this cover. I adore it. I want to get my own copy. This is my sister's copy that I've been having on my shelf. A large part of it is because of how pretty the cover is, but it's also because I watched the anime, which is coming up in July, on July 5th. That reaction video is coming up July 5th. I just want these babies to be happy. I'm not gonna get that, but I want these babies to be happy. And I loved the anime, the first 2 seasons that we got, and I hope there's a 3rd season. I haven't read it yet. I'm probably not gonna read it anytime soon, so it kind of is still on my TBR because of its cover. I just haven't read it yet. The very last prompt, as I mentioned earlier, is a book on your TBR that you never plan on reading. This kind of does overlap with earlier's prompt, as I mentioned, a book that's been on your TBR the longest, just because I can 100% see myself never reading The Princess Bride. As I explained in last month's book tag Tuesdays video, I love the movie so much. I love The Princess Bride so much, and I've heard that the book doesn't quite live up to the movie. Like, the movie is so much better, and I don't want to be disappointed by the book with how much I love the movie. Like, it's one of those things where it's like The Princess Bride, whenever I watch it, I get the same kind of feelings and the same enjoyment that I get from watching watching The Lord of the Rings, which is saying a lot because I absolutely adore The Lord of the Rings. But with The Lord of the Rings books, every time I read that, like I read that once a year. I read The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, and The Two Towers once a year. I was watching the movies before I read the books. The books definitely surpass the movies in many ways. The movies have scenes in them that surpass the books. The books and the movies were very much equal. Whereas with The Princess Bride, I don't want to be disappointed in the book, but there's a 50-50 chance that I will be disappointed in the book. I can 100% see The Princess Bride staying on my TBR, and the reason why I can see it staying on my TBR is because the way I consider it is that if there are any books on my physical bookshelf that I have not read, those are on my TBR pile. Those are definitively on my TBR pile, even though I don't have a specific shelf or a specific section for TBR books on my physical bookshelf. And I have a special edition of The Princess Bride, like the 30th anniversary, I think, or whatever year anniversary it is. I'm not going to get rid of that because I love the movie. So I can see it staying on my TBR pile because I can see myself not reading it but keeping it. So it's forever going to be on my TBR pile. I feel like I repeated myself a lot there, and I'm sorry about that, but that is the end of this video. Again, I'm not really in much of a mood to tag people or to figure out who to tag, so if you want to do this, please feel free to. I'm tagging anyone and everyone who wants to do this tag. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in Thursday's video.